Good morning and welcome to First Things First, everyone. I'm Jenna Wolf. That is the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. All good, guys?
Good morning.
Good morning. We got a big show today. A lot going on.
Man,
Cowboys front office, they're putting some pressure on Jason Garrett. We have a Lakers Hall of Famer who's getting fed up with his former team, but we are going to start with yet another bad loss for the Boston Celtics. They got blown out to the Toronto Raptors by 23 points, their biggest loss of the season thus far. Kyrie Irving, who just days ago said nobody could beat this Boston team in 7 games, was held to just 7 points last night. Boston has now dropped 5 of their last 7. Is it chemistry? Is it effort? Is it personnel? Is it coaching? Here's Marcus Smart when asked what he thinks is wrong with this team.
We're just not together. Last couple of years we were together, and now things hit. We become stronger. We're not there yet. Like I said, we're going to get there. It's just taking time.
Marcus said that you guys aren't playing together. Is that a fair diagnosis?
Is Marcus' opinion?
Is it yours?
Brad talked about just defensively, you guys have been taking shortcuts. So do you see that, and how do you guys fix things like that at this point in the season, do you feel like?
I don't know, it's up to Brad.
Clearly, there's tension on this team. Clearly, there's frustration on this team. Nick, what do you think has led to what has been a very disappointing stretch for the Celtics?
Well, in the micro, last night was the continuation of a trend over these last 3 games. The road loss to Milwaukee, which was a good game, a 1 loss at Milwaukee. There's no shame in that. Then the awful loss to the Bulls, and then a blowout loss to the Raptors. And the trend is they absolutely have fallen apart in a time in a game where in years past, even at the beginning of this year, they excelled. That's when the bench unit comes in the second quarter. Look at what the Celtics have been in this 3-game losing streak. The left column is what the point differential in the first quarter is. The right column is the second quarter. Every single one of these games, they've led after 1 and gotten obliterated during the second quarter.
Same thing last night.
So last night, it was as bad as it could possibly be. I think it was 36-13 in the second quarter. Kyrie goes to the bench. The team falls apart. Gordon Hayward gets more involved. Terry Rozier gets more involved. And they have no answers. And that, to me, is what is the most concerning thing for the Boston Celtics. Because amongst the other teams in the Eastern Conference, they are not going to have the most talented starting lineup. They do not have more talented starting lineup than Philly, than Milwaukee, nor than Toronto. But they're supposed to have more depth than everyone except for maybe Toronto. They're supposed to have a second unit that was good enough to be a starting 5.
Yeah, they're supposed to be 8 deep.
Absolutely.
Where all 8 of those players could start.
And when that second unit comes in, they have fallen apart. So that's the micro. The macro is what I have been trying to say all year long, which is there is no there with this team. There is what are the Celtics great at? Once upon a time, they were a great defensive team. Now they're a good defensive team. They've never been a great offensive team. Aside from Kyrie Irving going isolation, which is not what Brad Stevens wants to do, what is the thing that they are great at? We know what Toronto's great at. We know what Milwaukee's great at. We know what Philadelphia, and their best case scenario, can be great at. What are the Celtics great at? And why can they not win against good teams on the road? These are all real questions we have to answer. And at this point, the easiest answer is probably the right one. They're just a good team. They're a fine basketball team. They're a type of team that typically gets to the second round of the NBA playoffs and gets bounced. That's what they've looked like all year long.
But our problem is where they were last year. You add 2 all-stars that were hurt, Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, Brad Stevens, one of the best coaches in the NBA. You add him to the mix with these young players and how they had grown in Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They signed Marcus Smart to be able to come back. Marcus Morris, a great veteran player. Man, he can play for me.
Having his best year.
Al Horford, he can play for me. These guys are not me guys. They're great guys. Everywhere they've been, their teammates rant and rave about them. So, man, what's the problem? In the NBA, when you look at the best teams, we can go up and down, go to the East, go to the West, but typically you can identify a team with a name and say, you know something? It's that guy's team. But in Boston, I mean, they were supposed to be a collection of very good, with Gordon Hayward coming over. He's going to recover from this injury. Like, they're really, really talented, their first 8. But Whose team is it? Because we know Golden State, regardless of what they say, KD might think it is, Clay is enjoying himself.
It's Steph's team.
It's Steph's team. Right?
I think, you don't think Boston is clearly Kyrie's team?
Oh, no. Because let's look up and down. It's in Milwaukee, we know. It's Giannis. In Philadelphia.
It's Embiid.
All right, in Toronto.
It's Kawhi.
It might be rented, but
it's Kawhi's team.
So when you look at it, OKC, whose team is it?
It used to be Russ's team. I think Paul George is taking it, but
Paul George don't care. It's
right,
Russ's team.
Got it.
It's up and down it. We know in Houston, it's clear.
Harden's team.
Now, one of the reasons why Kyrie left Cleveland, and one of the things that he stated was, I want my own team. Also, I want to be under a coach where I feel like I can grow. Those are things he stated. I don't believe that Kyrie believes that Brad Stevens, now he's been there, is as good a coach as people had thought. And Kyrie didn't pick the Celtics. So this is not his team, and you can see that. When that first quarter, like if you say, okay, I'm just going to go to bed now. You are not going to believe what's getting ready to happen for the next
and only
3
minutes
quarters.
later.
And the reason why, because Kyrie could stop all that. Just like easily he could say something in the press conference, but he realizes in trying to be a leader, he said too much. Now he's trying to dial it back, but they don't like being with each other. No, that team doesn't have an identity. So that's where the Celtics are right now, John.
I want to ask you a question about Kyrie. Kyrie has played in 5 of the last 7 games. The Celtics lost all 5 of them. The 2 he didn't play in, they won. How do you explain that when maybe he's not the face of the team, but he certainly should be?
It is, to me, one of the more inexplicable stats throughout this NBA season is that the Celtics have been better when Kyrie's been out, win-loss record, and all their metrics have been worse when he's off the court versus when he's on the court. So all the analytics say the Celtics, and the eye test, to me, says the Celtics are better when Kyrie's playing. Within these games that he is playing in the game, when he goes to the bench, they get much worse. But they have been uncanny in their ability when they are the team they were in the playoffs last year, which is really all it takes is removing Kyrie from the lineup for a game. And they're the team they were last year because Gordon Hayward is not a big factor for this team one way or the other. As soon as that happens, they become the team that was a game away from the finals last year. I can't, listen, I've watched the Celtics incredibly closely, as I know you have, Chris. I can't explain that because I actually think Kyrie's having the best year of his career, so it doesn't make sense. But we now have a big enough sample. There is something to that.
Brad Stevens has the type of system that might work better with less talent. Also, when Terry Rozier takes over the point guard, he lets you know he can take over a team. So when he takes over and fills in, you know what the Celtics become? They become a system team. You know what? They move the ball more. You know something, too? It becomes a, we're not as talented, but I got your back. He's got his back. He's got his back. So collectively, they play better defense. That's who the Celtics were last year. That's what got them to the finals. And when Kyrie is not on the court, that's what you're seeing. So the analytics and everything, they might say something else, but on the court, when Terry Rozier is the point guard, and that's what the Celtics are going to have to be, because they're in a tough place because Kyrie holds all the cards. But I believe that Terry Rozier is going to be the point guard of their future because their system offensively is based on ball movement. Defense in the NBA is not based on talent. It's based on, am I going to buy into, I will protect you at all costs. I will make myself look bad. And when we don't see that with the Lakers, you get bad defense. Yes, are they better with Lonzo Ball on the court? Yes, but when you don't have that, I'm buying in for my brother, across the NBA, you will not get good defense.
If it's a Brad Stevens system issue, then the reality is this offseason, Brad Stevens needs to adjust the system. Because if your system works best...
But the system worked last year and was successful.
But it didn't, because they would have gotten washed in the finals. They lost to a Cavs team that was LeBron and a bunch of guys. If your system maxes out when you have not maximum talent, then your system is not an NBA championship system. Because we know this, in the NBA, if you need a good system, you need a good coach, you need all those things. To win championships, you must have elite talent.
A dude.
And so if whatever tweaks you need to make to your system, if you're right, Chris, those tweaks need to be made. Because whether the Celtics keep Kyrie or not, whether they trade for Anthony Davis or not, or whether they just hope Jason Tatum turns into that guy, you need a system that is at its best when you've got an MVP caliber player on the court. court. Because if not, you max out at, hey, that team overachieved again.